Hi, welcome to Artist and Critic. I'm Don Gray. Tonight I'm going to attempt what could be a difficult task, perhaps a seemingly self-serving task of looking at my own work as an artist. In the 5 or 6 years since my program Artist and Critic has been on the air, I have shown other people's work, and I have always said that it's from an artist's viewpoint, the program, the ideas, the discussions, and so forth. And I propose to attempt to discuss my work as directly and openly and honestly as I would anybody else's, as I have tried always to discuss anyone else's work on the program. So rather than looking at it as my remarks as either self-praise or self-criticism, let's just look at it as an artist who also happens to be a critic and a writer trying to be as honest about his work as he would be about any other artist's work. And with that preamble, I'd like to go to a large pastel self-portrait called Self-Portrait with Books. Unusually large for pastels. I really would like to know if anyone has work quite as large in this medium that's usually considered quite delicate. This work is 4 feet wide and 5 feet or more high. In the hand, which perhaps can't be seen down at the bottom of the picture, is held out in front of me, and actually I'm simply holding pastels in that hand while I draw with my right, but as the image is reversed in the mirror, the left arm seems to be cut off by the side of the canvas. The expression on the face is perhaps slightly worn, slightly tired. Well, everybody gets tired. Artists get tired from overwork. In my case, I have to work at other things beside painting to support myself and Jessie, my wife. And the toll takes a toll on one to split oneself amongst several activities. Obviously, I'd rather simply just paint and write and have the television program trying to discuss ideas in art. And of course, the setting of the books behind the head, the whole wall of one studio is filled with books. So they naturally fit in there. They're always in a natural state of disarray, and so it adds a sense of dynamism to the composition. Books are prevalent in some of my still lives. We can look at another self-portrait, still life with dollar bill, an art book in the foreground, the great age of frescoes. We see it in reality with the two saints by, his name slips me at the moment, Pontormo, I think. And then the reflection of it is seen in the mirror behind it, and we see the darker side of humanity. So I deliberately opened it at that page to suggest spirituality confronting the material world in the dollar bill, the hand thrusting it in the face of Mary, perhaps, and then the reaching, grasping figures in the dark section of the book, talking about the invasion of material things into the spiritual, creative world of the artist. In a rather simple still life called Books with Stovepipe, obviously I've got books piled around again, and we have an old-fashioned heating system, space heaters, and the stovepipe. It seems to make a powerful visual and emotional statement. The color of the books and the bindings, their shapes, their piles, working against the pipe. And it seems to express perhaps a certain poetry, perhaps a certain melancholy, if you will. The appearance of books, I'm an intellectual, I suppose. I always used to deny it. I never liked the idea of it. I detest pseudo-intellectuals, people who don't really think, but I've come to realize that I do think, I do understand, I don't create blindly. I create from a strong instinctual drive that can stem from unconscious things. I don't know why I always put things together, but afterward in looking at them, I do have an analytical, assessive mind that understands to a fair degree the meaning of the, excuse me just a moment, the meaning of the objects that have been painted and the meaning of their relationships. For example, the following picture, Still Life with Rubens and Van Gogh. Again, it's another painting with books. Rubens reproductions on the left, Van Gogh reproductions on the right. And I didn't realize it when I was painting it, but notice how the books create a protective little kind of corral, in a sense, a little fencing against the outside world. And what are they protecting? Well, they're protecting the little green teapot, the seashell, and the little wine glass on that beautiful red cloth. And of course, the pitcher, shell, and glass are me. See, I mean, I can see no other interpretation. This is why I have come to realize, as I've grown older and become more profound in art, that still lifes have a great deal of meaning. They're not just simply dead nature, as the French nature morte, as the natures call it, but they're living representations of the psychic structure, you would say. And we've discussed this before in relation to Cézanne and many other artists. But I love color. It must be obvious in the painting, the bright yellows, blues, and reds. I love form. I love solidity. I believe that the substance of real objects is expressive of eternal verities, if you will. That the substance and solidity of objects suggests that life goes on forever, that there is immortality, if we want to look at it that way, that the richness and meaning in objects, that God is present in all objects, and that it's the duty of the artist, whether he calls it God or simply natural force or mysterious meaning, that it's the duty of the artist to try to have the discipline and the creative power and the willpower to go after and create artworks that have this substance and solidity and ultimate meaning. Here's a pastel still life with a book again about Cézanne, John Ruwald's biography of Cézanne, as a matter of fact. And Cézanne looks over this bowl of nuts with utensils and a empty grapefruit rind and a yellow plate. Now, when I put this together, see, I must say that the still lives either create themselves just simply out of the welter of materials that are around the house and the studio, and I see relationships that have meaning and work with them, or I will arrange things. And I don't consciously say, well, I'm going to create a particular psychological relationship or put objects together that have certain meanings. I simply put them together because I feel that they go well together at the moment. Maybe there's something about color or shape. But then I look at it afterwards, and obviously there's something here that a relationship between Cézanne and the objects. I would say that, again, I am identifying with both Cézanne and the objects. Cézanne is one of my favorite painters. I think he's a tremendously profound painter. I identify with his personal struggle, but I think the nuts and the bowl and that foreground circle is me. And I suppose one could see it as a certain circular mandala searching for a certain wholeness in the Jungian sense, contrasted to the rectangles of the book above, and Cézanne looking out over almost like a beneficent father figure in a way, in perhaps a Freudian sense. That needing some kind of relationship to the older male, the older artist who blazed the way for us younger fellows, who aren't staying so young any longer. And in a powerful still life like Brussels sprouts and Bosch, which has been discussed on a program of the street painter, we look at the overall composition, and it's a composition of great complexity. I think it's one of my most successful jewel-like still lives. It's small, relatively speaking, 22 by 30, but painted with a great deal of effort and willpower and sticking with forms and not being satisfied with an easy solution. And as much as I think Cubism is I'm exaggerating when I say this, an infernal creation of 20th century technology, it nonetheless overemphasizes geometry, but I must admit in all candor that the arrangement and breaking up of space here is approaching a certain cubist abstract quality, despite the fact that I am being very, very respectful of objects, from vitamin B bottles to bufferin bottles to the Brussels sprouts upon the plates, and the illustration of Bosch on the dark book. There's obviously a confrontation of light and darkness, of the light of consciousness, the darkness of unconsciousness, death and despair, that kind of thing. And perhaps I'm saying it's founded upon knowledge, because it is resting upon books. I never thought of it that way before, but it seems apparent that, and I know from not analyzing, but just simply being aware of my own character, my mind needs to be active. It has to try to understand things, while the other side of my personality is based on faith, upon emotion and feeling, so that those two halves are trying to make what may be a somewhat uneasy juxtaposition here, just as they tried to join together in Cézanne. I think that that's why I have such a feeling, and if I might say an understanding of Cézanne, because we are very much alike in many respects, as persons, as human beings. And then a large self-portrait pastel, which has been seen on a street painter's show, with Jessie, Benton Evans, my wife, behind me, and Chow Chow the dog down below. Now, I didn't think about it when I was composing this, but this is really a unification of male and female. So, I'm going after reality. As I say, I respect for reality. I'm trying for a strong reality, intense color, and the strongest possible reality of form. But again, it's the reality that's filtered through me, and me is all I have. And I can't do it any other way but the way I do it, based upon the best will and honesty and so forth. But Jessie's body disappearing behind me is talking about me perhaps in a dominating relationship, but it also is well, of course the painting is about me, but it also talking about a desire to unify perhaps the male and female sides in myself, in a sense. Is Chow Chow looking out from under my arm in the lower right-hand corner a symbol of the animal nature of all of us? See, I don't know. If we pan up on the picture a little bit, and we see the top of it, we see the grapefruit, the golden grapefruit on the left, and we keep the white light on the right that's just disappearing. Maybe we can pull back on it and go right, and we see the white light, square light, in the dark window looking out into the night. And we see the white light, the equivalent of the moon at night, the equivalent of the woman, Jessie, the moon, and we see the yellow grapefruit, the equivalent of the sun, the male shape, the equivalent of me, the male. Now, I didn't think of that. It just happened that way. There was a grapefruit up there, and the light was reflected in the window. But creativity is an immensely profound, deep, and mysterious thing that we know very, very little about, and it's best simply to go with it. And those people who are creative as artists come up with these powerful, effective images that can last. That, as I said on a street painters program, I'm trying to last through the ages, that create paintings that will last after I'm dead. My life is more than halfway over now. Do you think I want to waste it simply making money? You know, I could laugh and be facetious about it. Of course, we all want to make money and we want to survive, but compared to life and death and eternity and this transitory, meaningless, not meaningless, I don't mean that, transitory instant of life, what is more important? Something that lasts forever, or this passing success? And obviously I'm voting for the former, the eternity. I explore our landscape in a variety of ways. This is a small acrylic going for luminosity, going for light, a tree in a field, trying for the substance of the tree, the sparkle of light in the clouds on one of those wonderful fair weather days that just sparkles with beauty. Perhaps we could close in on the tree and see some of the detail and solidity of the individual foliage clumps, you know, as close as the focal point of the camera will rise us. And we focus in there and rise up to the top of the tree and see the sense of structure that I'm actually going for here. In a picture, again, a small painting, acrylic of wheelbarrow in a garden. I'm going for a sense of solidity, of reality, and light and shadow. Again, that's probably some plastic scattered behind the wheelbarrow that gives a glitter of light to it. But I am a realist, unabashed, avowed realist who nonetheless feels that the realistic image is not all that there is in art, that a deeper message must come from it, perhaps an unspoken message of feeling, of deeper ideas that link superficial reality images with the deeper foundations of existence. I don't believe this is a superficial image, but it is an image of the surface. A smaller acrylic that I call dappled sunlight, a rather muted palette for me, just greens and browns and umbers basically, searching for the splash of light upon the tree trunks, and as it speckles a distant hill and crawls like little animals or worms across the ground in the foreground. A companion piece to this is Volkswagen in the sunlight, searching for the solidity of all objects, the reality of them, the power of the light that works on the side of the Volkswagen. Perhaps we could close in on the side of the Volkswagen and see how the fence bar, horizontal fence bar, is reflected in it, and how the different rippling aspects of light are animated and diffused in that. In a Lowe's, which we've seen on the street painter painting, Lowe's 86th Street Theater on 3rd Avenue, I think it is, and 86th Street, maybe it's Lexington, a powerful statement of architectural structure, a powerful symbolic statement. Again, I am a very personal artist, despite the reality, and everything I paint I identify with. That's why I can recognize it in a Hopper or Van Gogh. Of course, it doesn't take too much sensitivity or ability to recognize it in those artists. They're so open about it and so obvious about it. But I'm a similar kind of artist, putting myself deeply into objects, empathizing with them. And so the structure of the front of that theater, again, in some way, unnamably and indefinably relates to the psychic structure, my psychic structure. In 72nd Street, Delhi, this is an acrylic actually painted from a sketch, colored pencil drawing that I did. I don't often work that way, but I did in this instance on 72nd Street, perhaps around 3rd Avenue, and having to do with the structure of stairs and the bicycle with the big basket and the delivery boy taking out objects. I'm always trying for a strong design basis, powerful color relationships, and a deeper meaning, well, whatever that may be. I feel that meaning is important in paintings, and that's why Artist & Critic is often devoted to the idea of meaning. An artwork must have meaning. This is a painting painted on the spot, West 24th Street, park here, deserted or closed. I guess it was on the weekend, actually. A restaurant with a parking lot to the left with the little change-making blue booth, searching for solidity of form and the poetry of the place, the meaning that's in it. And one can say, well, the artist is projecting his own inner feelings in the work. And of course that may be true, but one also senses that there are qualities of meaning intrinsic in realistic objects. And this, of course, is why I pursue with such a fanatical intensity, if that is an apt description, in works like The Three Cabbages. I've gone through many different ways of working, from very loose to very tight and very controlled, because I felt that I had to rediscover what reality was. In my own time as an artist, I looked around me and I felt that all not all, most other artists had abandoned their responsibility to make art from reality. They were either copying photographs, which is all right if you're working with a great deal of creativity, but you're losing contact with the object, basically, or they were simply ignoring reality. They were either slopping on the paint and getting away with shortcuts that were empty, really childish and undeveloped, immature, unfeeling, meaningless. So in my own way, I have sought to reestablish the primacy of visuality in art as well as emotion in art. And if one looks at my painting over a span of 25 years, or even in the last 10 years, there's quite a variety, but it's all unified by this absolute necessity for basing it on reality. A large case scene of sunflowers seen on an earlier street painter's program, 40 inches by 60. Again, the obvious expressiveness of this needs little discussion. It is a painting of death, as many of Van Gogh's sunflowers are a painting of death or combinations of death and life, but it's painted with all the honesty and energy and effort that I could muster, and the detail and character of the forms is felt. Little, if anything, has been slighted, and I can't help but feel that perhaps one day this painting will be ranked as one of the great paintings of sunflowers or organic growing materials. Whatever, I think it holds with Van Gogh in its own particular way. It's less orientalized, less two-dimensionalized, but the character, it seems to me, is undeniable. And a still life, I think I was desperate to paint. I needed the expressive release of painting. This is a combination acrylic with pastel overlays. It becomes obviously a symbolic statement of the dark pot and the light bowl. You know, the darkness and lightness of the human soul, with that red phone book poking its aggressive nose up between the two, talking perhaps about energy, life force, sexuality, passion, whatever. And in the background, that a wonderful dress, I think it might have been one of Jessie's dresses, with this wonderful expressive black and white pattern that seems so forceful and so expressive. Another version of it, as it evolved, I reversed the positions of the bowl and pot, turned the bowl over, the phone book was removed. The pattern on the left seems the same, and moving slightly to the right, I incorporate a very colorful cloth, and it becomes, again, very real. I never am satisfied if I'm not trying to get real substance, real space, real depth, but obviously the pattern and the color and the expressive intensity is of equal importance in such a picture. I do paint pictures that have less color intensity if the subject demands that. I don't artificially continue a formula of color or a way of seeing. I am open to what nature presents to me. And what we'll look at is a series of vitamin jars. Looks like maybe there's some salt tablets, some crumpled napkins, and I must confess that this chair often is by my bed, or was at this time, laden horribly with all these messy, magical objects. And to me, I use them, they just happen to get there, and all of a sudden I look at them and I say, my God, you know, this has possibilities. I always have the need to paint and create. That's the way artists are. We're never satisfied. Everybody, you know, other people want to make money and they're never satisfied. They never have enough. You know, they're like Edward G. Robinson in Key Largo, and they ask him, what do you want out of life? And Humphrey Bogart, Edward G. Robinson is a criminal, isn't quite sure what he wants, and Humphrey Bogart says, you want more, right? And Edward G. Robinson says, more, yeah, that's what I want, more. Well, that's what I want. That's what all artists want, is more painting, more time to paint, more time to express oneself, to explore the nature of the world and the universe, as humble as these little jars. And there's a beautiful relationship, perhaps almost like a little family. One could say that I'm creating a little family. As a teacher once said, that the still life painter Morandi, I almost forgot his name, Giorgio Morandi created little family relationships with bottles. But mine are very realistic, not stylized like his. I'm going for reflections. I'm going for the solid forms. And again, a certain tippiness of perspective. The background drawers and shadows create these sharp angles. And again, that has to be a reflection of deeper psychological issues. We look at a variation on this picture. On the same chair, you know, it's the same garbage pile by the bed that changes and evolves as someone finally carries something out to the kitchen or whatever. But it's still the same tippiness. I really have a need to make V's in the picture, almost like embracing opening arms. And you look at the white metal frame on the chair with the black vinyl seat, it makes a V. You look at the salt on the left. I just have a need to tip these things this way. And I say, well, it's not that way, but I have the need to do it. I tip the vitamin C jar. Yes, I take vitamins on the right so that they make a V. And it fulfills something in me that needs to grow, perhaps it needs to expand, that wants to grasp, to evolve. Here's a pastel a side of me perhaps that I don't always show, a fish head and bones on the plate. It can be a little bit gory, a little bit gruesome perhaps, but life can be that way. But with Jessie's two knit hats above it, providing beautiful color accents, to me it's tremendously expressive of a truth in life, part of the death in life perhaps, and perhaps also the beauty in life, the contrast of the two. A similar pastel, small one, 22 by 30, where green rubber gloves seem to hang ominously over a wax paper, rectangular boxes, and draped towels in the background. I have never shown some of these, but they express, again, some of the struggle, strife, emotional power, the not necessarily the pretty side of life, but they're expressive. Rubber gloves are beautiful, but there's also something horrible about them. Giorgio de Chirico, the early surrealist, not quite a surrealist, painted some of the horror of rubber gloves in a different way. So I've taken the liberty to give you a little bit of insight into my own character, my own creativity, my own work as an artist, as well as a critic and commentator on art. The program's been Artist and Critic. I'm Don Gray. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.